All right, welcome to the show. We have Ralph here today with us, and without a big introduction from my side, let me get right into the questions. But first of all, thank you so much, Ralph, for being here, making the time in your busy schedule. You just arrived, I think, Saturday from the US. You're flying out to India on Sunday, so it's great to have you here in the show. And before we go into the business details, give a little bit about a background about yourself. So tell us a little bit about your personal background.
Great, and thanks a lot, Daniel. So my background, I grew up in the States. I studied in Baltimore. I started working with Anderson out of New York, moved to Europe in '99, built a consulting practice with Ernst& Young, and then left there, joined a smaller consulting firm, and then set up Trestle Group in 2003, founded Trestle Group Foundation in 2005, and have recently set up Trestle Group Ventures this year. So I'm based in Zurich, and that's the short background.
All right, excellent. Tell us a little bit more about the Trestle Group and the different components and like what is it about and also why did you start it?
Yeah, so maybe we start with the why. When I was working with the large consulting firms, I just didn't really feel a connection the more senior I became to the organization, and I felt that if we could build a great place for people to work, then people would be motivated, and that would help us grow our firm and connect with our clients. So we decided to set up a consulting firm. We saw at the time in Europe, companies were exploring how to outsource, how to set up operations in other locations. And so we thought we would specialize in that area, which was quite new at the time. And so we jumped into that without any experience and a bit naive, I must say. And then after that, a couple years later, then we set up our foundation based on some of the observations we saw through the consulting practice. The consulting practice is focused on three different areas today. So it's around sourcing and business excellence. It's around risk management and procurement, and helping companies organize themselves more effectively. We have operations in the US, Europe, parts of Asia, and Middle East, and we're always looking for interesting people to join our team.
Okay, so that's the management consulting for that's a consulting company. Tell us about the foundation.
Yeah, so the foundation, what we saw was that there's a lot of investment in emerging markets to help develop talent, build up infrastructure, facilities. But once these investments are made, there's no link to where the clients will come from. And without the clients, there's no revenue, and no revenue, there are no jobs or growth. So we thought if we could connect our network that we have with Trestle Group to these initiatives, that would bring the clients, and then that would help stimulate growth. We then looked at, where do we want to focus our time, and we decided we would focus on entrepreneurs. And within entrepreneurs, we decided to focus on women because we found in most countries, women have a much more challenging time than men to grow a business. And then we were guided by some from very smart advisors to focus not on microfinance, but the level above. So these are the small and growing businesses. And so that's our focus. We provide human capital to these women entrepreneurs through an innovative program where we work with corporations like Credit Suisse, like UBS, PepsiCo, IBM, where the people of our sponsoring firms, they volunteer their time. So it's about 2 hours a week over about a 4 or 5 month period of time to help support the woman entrepreneur.
Okay, where's the foundation at right now?
So it's a Swiss-based foundation. We've worked in about 25 different countries. We've just launched an initiative called TGF 2020 to support 20,000 women by 2020. We've done programs in Jordan. We have programs scheduled in Poland and India this year. So it's on track, and I'm very excited to be involved in it. I deliver a lot of the training myself, and it's great just to connect with the entrepreneurs and learn about their businesses as well.
Okay, all right, good. So you started the consulting firm 2003 and the foundation 2005. So you have quite a bit of experience now over the years. What were some of the biggest challenges for you when you look back of growing the business?
I think for the consulting practice, it was challenging having never been in a small environment. So, working with a large firm, you always have everything provided to you, so you don't have to think about, what does my logo look like, or what should be the format of my business card, or what is my email address. And so there were just a lot of little things that were quite distracting in terms of setting it up. I mean, those are exciting things, but time consuming. And so that was something new for us. Also, when we started our firm, we didn't really have the network that we needed to sell. So it took a really long time to build up that network where we could sell real advisory services. That was something that we completely underestimated. Funding is also challenging. I think that it's important. I don't think that you necessarily need to have the funding in place when you start a business, but you should certainly be willing to raise funding if you need it, and be prepared to make the tough ask throughout that process. Because I think that it's very difficult to predict the revenue stream for most small businesses.
Okay. Okay. So, just let's stick with the consulting for the moment. How did you get it off the ground?
Well, we had an idea. That was the starting point, and we were very excited and passionate about it. And I think that as an entrepreneur, I think that's the most critical element of starting a business, is that you truly believe that it will be successful. We had a small core team that believed in it as well, and that's how it took off. I think that what helped us was that every day you just wake up and you look in the mirror and you just say, "This is going to work." And you surround yourselves by people that are supportive. You don't need people that are just telling you the things that you only want to hear. But I think it's equally important to get rid of the people that are doubting you, because that takes a lot of energy away and also creates doubts for yourself.
So how did you grow the business initially? You mentioned, sorry, you mentioned networking being a challenge, like not having the network. So how did you go? I mean, how did you go about solving that challenge and essentially getting the first clients and then growing it from there?
Yeah, so we participated in a lot of events. We emailed people, reached out to people, did cold calls, which I just absolutely hate. So, and we were very fortunate to get a client that believed in us, and so we started working with that client. The next challenging part was how do you get the next client, because you're so busy delivering for the first client that you don't have time to look for the next client. And this was a cycle that continued for about 5 years into the growth of the firm. I think that you also get smarter in which meetings you take. In the beginning, you're anxious to have lots of meetings because you think if you're busy, then you're being successful. In the future, the less meetings you have, the more successful you're actually being. So it's a learning process.
Okay. Okay. So how did you deal with that, scalability, or with, working in the business, working versus working on the business?
Well, I think that you work a lot. I think that as an entrepreneur, you need to be prepared to put in a lot of hours. So we were working a lot on projects. We were also working outside of the projects to develop different things. We tried to make ourselves seem bigger than we were, more credible. So we did a lot on the marketing side, and I think that this really paid off. So our idea was let's build the vision and then we'll fill it in as we go. And we had quite a large vision, and still do today. So there's a lot of room to fill in. But it's exciting to have something that keeps you up throughout the day and night.
You mentioned something interesting that a lot of people that I talk to mention. You said, "I hate cold calling." I think it's something that a lot of people don't really want to do all day long. So how did you deal with that, and also how did you afterwards, maybe after the first client, how did you make sure that you don't constantly have to cold call new clients years after you started the business?
I think it's important to when you approach a meeting to really understand what is success. And I think a lot of people think that getting the meeting is success. And actually, it's the results out of that meeting. And you don't necessarily need to get a contract out of that meeting, but then you should get a referral to somebody else. So that's where we started to get better at is really making the ask, okay, if you don't have a project for us, then can you refer us to somebody that might? Also, I think it's important that, when you do get a meeting, you should try to focus on getting a project. And a lot of people are intimidated to make that ask, and they chat around a lot, and then the meeting's over, and then they wait for the next meeting. So you need to be really focused, understand what you want, and then also just to let the prospective client or customer that you're meeting with actually talk and explain what their real challenges are, and listen and see if you can find the right solution. I think people jump too early to provide the solution without really understanding, what really is that person looking for.
There's some really good golden nuggets of wisdom in there. One of the most important things I think you said is you got to be really clear about lots of things. One of them being what is success in the whole approach, what is success for the meeting. So like, what do you want to get out of it, and also so like you don't end up after the meeting, going home, and it's sort of like that gap. You're in that gap where, okay, the meeting's over, but you have no idea how to get the next meeting. So I think there's a lot of it's very important to be very clear on that and very clear on what you're offering as well, like being crystal clear on what it actually is that you provide in terms of value, and then figuring out how does that fit into the market, or how does that fit into the needs and wants of the clients that you're going to talk to. It's really good points in there. Okay, good. So talking about the foundation, I mean, we've been talking I don't know 1 or 2 years now, and I've been involved in the foundation as well. We've been in Jordan together doing the workshop, and I've just been impressed with the development of this, of the venture, because you've been able to forge some incredibly strong partnerships with the United Nations, for example, and some other really big players. I'd love to talk about that specifically, about getting the foundation off the ground and forging these partnerships. So, first question, how did you get the foundation off the ground? How did you get traction? How did you get the first, sponsors, supporters, and also, customers and clients for the foundation?
Yeah, I think that we just set up our consulting firm, and then less than 2 years into that, we'd actually then launched setting up the foundation. So it was really having two startups at one time, and I really do credit that to being naive, because we just underestimated how challenging that is. Most large corporations are focused on working with other large foundations, so to get them to adopt something new is very challenging. And at the time, it was something, I would say groundbreaking, having a focus on women entrepreneurs in emerging markets. Today, it's a topic that everyone is familiar with, but 10 years ago, this was not on the radar. So you go to a lot of meetings, and people would be, why do we want to support women? How does that work? Why do we care about emerging markets? So we were fortunate to get a few key sponsors early on, and I think it was a combination of luck and being passionate about what we believed in. But having Microsoft as our first supporter made a big difference. It did give a lot of credibility to the initiative. And then the entrepreneur that we supported in Bangladesh, she's done tremendously well. We're still in touch with her. She's really a force that's helped a lot of women also in the country. She set up a Women in Tech organization or community, represents the country abroad, speaks at conferences, truly an inspiration. So, getting those successes early, that was helpful. And then just not giving up. I tell people when they say no that I'll be back, and I just keep knocking. So
I love that. I'll be back. I love that. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about the nitty-gritty a little bit about Microsoft. How did you get Microsoft on board? Where did you start? Did you know somebody at Microsoft already? Did you cold call them? Did you cold email them? Did you get an introduction? How did you go about this?
Yeah, we met Microsoft when I was speaking at a conference in the Philippines, and so we were on a panel together, and we were just talking about what we were doing, and that person was really interested in it, and so we were able to get some momentum there. So we basically got Microsoft as we were just turning on the lights of the foundation. It was really a lucky break, and having IBM come in right after Microsoft helped to establish even more credibility, and we ended up doing a lot of programs with IBM. Throughout Africa, parts of the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and still have a very good relationship with them. But I think it's something. Nothing is a quick win as an entrepreneur, at least from my perspective. So you need to be really in it for the long run and be passionate about it. And if you're smart and you're clever, I think that you can figure your way out.
Absolutely, I love that. So just quickly, once again about IBM, how did you get a partnership with IBM? Did you also meet somebody there at an event, or how did you do that?
So we met IBM on a panel as well. So that seemed to be the trend. I was speaking a lot at conferences, and so I met people, and that's how we connected with IBM. And IBM was quite keen to get involved because Microsoft was involved. So it worked out. Ironically, Microsoft was very focused on women in technology. And IBM wanted to focus on anything but technology because they wanted their employees to experience something different. So we had very different criteria for both organizations.
Okay, so it's great. Just to recap quickly, I think that there's a great golden nugget in there. You basically leverage that platform you had being a speaker, to also meet those people, because a lot of people, they just with an empty backpack, they try to just go after the big players, and it's always challenging. Not just in terms of they're not seeing you as an equal, but also it can be very intimidating. It can feel like, okay, I don't have anything to offer to them. But if you come from the place of, okay, I have a platform of speaking, and it may not be speaking, maybe you're publishing, maybe you're an expert in another area, whatever. But if you have a platform, I always call it a vessel. You have a vessel that you can leverage, and for you, it was speaking was a big vessel that you leverage in order to meet those people at at panels, because also they saw you as an equal. They saw you that you were able to have that conversation with them. I think that's a brilliant golden nugget there.
Yeah, that was very helpful, and I think that having your talking points down and always pitching. So everyone that I speak with is getting pitched about something within Trestle, whether they like it or not, and and if they completely don't like it, then the conversation is pretty much over. So
yeah.
It's important to take advantage of every opportunity that you have, because you never know that that person you're speaking with, that might be your next customer. So it's important to keep that in mind.
It's interesting that you say that, because there's a level of confidence that is required in order to always talk about what's happening, what you have to offer. A lot of people are not confident with talking about that, and I think it's also a lack of clarity very often about what you provide, and being just confident that what you provide is really making a difference and is really important. And I think I very much believe, when it comes to sales, I very much believe that, if what you're providing is, you believe it's important, and it's important that the world knows about it and that it makes a difference, it's sort of your obligation to talk about it as much as possible, because otherwise you're doing a disservice to yourself and to everyone, that could possibly be impacted by what you have to offer.
Yeah, and I think that, just also referring to the Simon Sinek model, with the why.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
No worries.
I think that's quite important, because people are looking for what you're passionate about, and they're not so interested in your brochures or your slides that you have. They really want to hear from your heart, why you're doing this. And I think that if people actually open up a bit more and expose themselves, that's very effective. People connect with that versus just trying to do the pitch and run you through 20 pages of stuff.
Yeah.
I think if you really express why you're really doing this, you connect at a much different level.
Absolutely agree. I mean, Simon Sinek just completely changed the way that I do business, because I always started from a place of this is what I do and everything. And as soon as you start coming from a place of basically sharing your vision instead of just your prospectus, I think that just makes a huge difference. And I mean, for me, it made a huge difference once I started with this why. So you've learned a lot of things over the past 10, 12 years. Now if knowing what you know now, if you could go back 10, 12 years when you started the company, and you could go back in time and talk to yourself 10, 12 years ago and give yourself just 3 nuggets of advice or wisdom, what would you say to yourself?
By having those challenging times, I think that you have to think differently, and you have to think faster. And I think that if you had all the funding in the world, for example, you wouldn't be as creative and you wouldn't be as passionate. And if you're focused on if you need to pay your rent, and if you're not able to pay your rent, then you're going to get kicked out of your home. Then that creates a different type of pressure. And so I think that you do what you need to do to survive. And of course, you can look back and you could say I shouldn't have done that, or I wouldn't have done that. But I think that you learn from all of those experiences. So there's really nothing that I would have changed in this process. I've learned a lot, and I incorporate that going forward. But for me, it was a great education, and I'd much rather have spent it doing that than continuing on in my corporate career.
I just love what you said. Most people would say I would buy Google stocks, or I would do this or that and this. But I think it's just a lot. It takes a lot to say something like that. It just reminded me of a quote from Seth Godin, where he answered that question as well, and he basically said, well, I wouldn't change anything, because everything, even the worst suffering that I went through, was important to end up where I am today. So I think that's kind of where you're coming from as well.
Yeah, and I think, over the 10, 12 years that we've been running these businesses, I think there's maybe only 2 points where I was really at a point where I was just I really need to start thinking about what am I doing. And I think that's pretty remarkable over such a period of time, because we had a lot of challenges, and even as you grow, there are still challenges with that. So as you grow, you need to have even more cash to fund the growth, and your challenges get bigger than what you can handle through your friends and family. So it takes you to a new level. So it never really stops being challenging, but it's exciting that you're accountable for your own destiny, and I think that is what is most inspiring for me as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree with that. So, you mentioned just fundraising, just quickly. So, also about the consulting firm and the foundation. How did you go about raising funds?
Yeah, I mean, I think that fundraising is for at least for a more junior person or a younger person going into a business, that's a very uncomfortable topic. People don't like to ask for money, and I can understand that. So I was very uncomfortable as well. So you have to have a compelling story, and you have to be able to sell it. And you basically just have to go to everyone that you think might have funding and just pitch it, and you see where you go. I think that everyone underfunds their ideas, so they're way too conservative in how much they think that they'll need to raise. So I would advise most entrepreneurs to bump up those amounts that they think they're going to need over a period of time, because most likely they will need that. But I think just making a list of the people that you want to approach, trying it. I think it's something best to do face to face. I think it's not an email discussion. I think learn from it, then pitch to the next ones, and then see how it goes. Also, getting that first funder and then really marketing that you have a funder helps a lot as well.
Okay, this is really good advice. I often see people raising funds, and then later on they realize, oh, we're running out. We're running out of funds like a couple of months already after they raised the last round, because they completely underestimated how much it takes. And almost it's like with every project, and you know what I'm talking about. With every kind of project or venture, almost always you underestimate how long this is going to take and how much money it's going to take.
Yeah.
So this is really good advice there. You talked about the lessons before. There's a lot of lessons you learned in the whole process of building these ventures over the past 10 to 12 years. What are like the 3 biggest lessons that you learned over the past 10, 12 years?
I think that believing in yourself, surrounding yourself by positive people. I think that makes a huge impact on how successful you'll be. I think that you also shouldn't be naive to if your idea is going to be successful or not. But there's the expression "fail fast," and I'm always a bit skeptical of that, because I think that some ideas take longer than others, and if you can continue to go with it and you're passionate about it, then I don't see any harm in pursuing that. So I'd like to hang on longer till the bitter end. In that sense, I think that understanding your network is very important. I think also, once you've got enough clients where you can start to focus strategically, I think turning down opportunities that take you in different directions that are not around the core business is very important, because they're distracting and it's hard to leverage that. And I think just having a story and staying positive. I think that's as an entrepreneur, that's the exciting part of it.
Yeah, you mentioned something really important there about opportunities. Very often I've seen that as well. The more public you become, the more people know about you, the more things come along your way. And I've experienced that many times. There's an opportunity there, and there's a bright shiny object here, and these things can be very exciting. But I think the question is always like, is this going to move you towards the vision, or is it just a distraction? And I think that you can only decide that once going back to the beginning where we talked about clarity, you can only decide that if you're very clear about your purpose and the vision of the company, where everything is going. So that's great input. Now I just wanted to get a bit more insights on the process of how you went from the first couple of clients with the Trestle, the consulting company, from the first couple of clients to where you are today. Can you give us a bit more insights about the story of how this all unfolded?
Yeah, I think that one of the milestones in our development was really moving from, I would say, a contractor type model where we were basically just selling individuals and selling ourselves onto engagements, to where we were actually selling projects and we were delivering as a consulting firm. And this really took 5-6 years for us to get to that stage where companies were buying advice from us and not individuals. I think also people tend to sell him or herself. It's much easier than selling the we or the group or the team. And I think that I would strongly advise that to many entrepreneurs, because too many people take on too much responsibility, and that's where they start to get buried down, and then they can't focus on the next pursuit. So selling those first consulting projects, that was a milestone for us, and then getting multiple clients running in parallel, that was also a big step for us. bringing in partners that could manage teams of people. That was very helpful. People that you could trust to distribute the workload among the team. That was important. So it took stages for us to get to that point. I think also on the marketing side, I know in Zurich we have a breakfast event 1 or 2 times a year, and the first one we had, I think we had maybe 20 people, and 5 of those people were us. And so it's a pretty small event. And today we have 100, 150 people attend, and everyone looks forward to that. And I think just being persistent and investing in the community, it pays off over time. I mean, these networks, they mature, and you mature, and eventually something will come out of it.
So I just want to get a bit more clarity on how it looked like before selling project and afterwards. So how did like the approach look like before you were selling project? Like, were you just going in and working as consultants on an hourly basis, only one client? Like, how was it like that, or how was it set up?
Yeah, so I think that most of our clients, they needed one person, and if you were that person, then you fit the project and you would do that. And you would do that for 6 months, and the rate was okay, but you couldn't add any extra team members because it wasn't a project. So it was different than selling a team of people where you have 3 to 5 people working on an engagement, and that's a lot of fun as a consultant because you're working together. So it's one person versus the 5 approach, and once we were able to move into that 5 scenario or 10 scenario, that made a huge difference for us. From a growth perspective. It also allowed us to bring in more junior people because then you could complement them with our senior people. And so, we got a bit more diversity in our firm in terms of experience.
Okay, so, after the change, basically after this 5-6 years, once you've got more into the project mode, did you hire more consultants? Did you bring them in as contractors? Did you work with partner companies? How did you do that?
Yeah, I mean, most of our people are fixed employees. We do work with externals because that helps in situations where we just don't have the staff. In some of the growth phases, we had to work in a contracting model, and it really depends on which country you're working in as well. So, some countries it's easy to access talent from the market quickly, and also to remove employees if you have to in a worst case scenario. Other countries are much more restrictive, so it really influences your hiring strategy.
Okay. So just curious, like how did your value proposition change from when you sold yourself to when you sold the project or the company, essentially?
I think that people were looking for experiences that we could bring into their organization that we delivered in other organizations. So they were really looking to benefit from those methodologies that we had created versus my personal skills and my abilities to deliver something. They were really buying the expertise of our firm and not the expertise of me, for example. I think that's the real difference.
Okay, so but essentially, instead of saying, this is what I can do, you said, okay, these are the tools or the resources or the methodologies that we created. So you packaged it essentially into things you could bring into the company, like best practices and methodologies, right?
And I mean, basically everything in the conversation is we or the firm or how we can do this versus I've done this, or this is what I do, or this is my background. So it's really shifting yourself away. And I think that in the early stages of a company, you're very insecure because you don't want to miss that opportunity. So you feel like you're the only person that can really service that client to the expectations that will keep the project running. Mm-hmm. So you're really pushing just yourself, but you don't trust anyone else in this opportunity, because if you mess up that opportunity, then it's gone, and then who knows what that means for the next one.
Yeah.
So I understand how you can get into that situation, but at some point it's good to shift out of that and start to build a team around you that you can also rely on.
So how did you organize the company? Like, were you always the person who was selling the project and then also in the delivery, or were you out at the outside of the delivery, not involved in that and just involved in the sales process, or how on marketing, or how did you organize yourself within the group?
Yeah, so we took on different roles. So I had the CEO role. There was a COO, there was a CFO, there's a person responsible for HR. So we had internal functions, and then we also had delivery functions. For most of the years, I've been involved delivering projects that I was also involved in selling. Today, I'm more in a group CEO function. So we have a CEO of the consulting practice. So that's matured a bit. But there's a management team that works together. And we put together, what we want to accomplish on a quarterly basis, and then we see, if we do that or not. And we try to also, keep ourselves realistic and not overachieve or try to overachieve because, I mean, realistically, there's always next year, and there's no rush to,
Yeah.
to become more and more successful. I mean, most of us left very challenging corporate environments, and there's no need to recreate that in our own environment.
Absolutely agree with that. So, like, one of the biggest challenges a lot of people share with me when they scale and grow the business is how do you hire the right talent? A lot of people have, I would say most entrepreneurs, because maybe they've never done it before, but also because it's something completely new as an entrepreneur compared to in a corporate setting. Hiring people is a big challenge usually. How did you deal with that? How did you hire the right people for the right roles, for the right company fit, and everything that goes around that?
Yeah, I mean, in our business, it's very challenging because your engagements, they come very fast, so you can't really prepare or know when they're going to happen. Then you need to find people that are available at that point in time, and sometimes you bring on people that are not at the right level, and you hope that when you build the team, there are some people that have more experience that can balance it out. But what I've also learned, and I truly believe in, is that when you have the wrong people in the team, it's very critical to get them out, as painful as that is. And I'm not one that enjoys that discussion, but the longer you delay that, the greater effect it has on your reputation in the firm, but also the culture of the firm is really compromised by those people that don't fit.
So how did you hire for the right fit?
Well, I mean, I always look at it from the perspective, would I, one, enjoy camping with that person? So, could I hang out in a tent over a weekend? And if I think yes, that probably would work, then I think that's a fairly good combination. Technical skills are quite important, so attention to detail. In our business, fortunately or unfortunately, PowerPoint is a skill that is quite valued, so that's something that we look for. So it's a combination of things, but I mean, I like to hope that the people that I'm working with are people that I would also be friends with, and people have different working styles. That's just how I like to work. Other people, that's not so important to them, but that's how I choose people.
Okay, now staying on the topic of hiring people, how did you know when to hire people? I mean, did you just wait until you had the budget to hire somebody else to replace you, basically as the consultant, and then scale it from there, or did you hire people before that, or like how did you know when to hire the right people, and when did you hire those people?
Yeah, it was a combination. So sometimes you make strategic hires and you have a forecast and you believe you're going to hit that, and other times it's opportunistic. So you have engagements and you just need to hire people immediately, so you bring them on. So it's a combination. I mean, it's really a question of your budget. So as many people as you would actually love to hire, it really depends on if you have the budget or not. And you don't want to be in a scenario where you hire somebody and 2 months later you can't afford it. So it's very challenging to find the right timing for hires.
So you've built the company now to quite a big size, and you're the group CEO now. You've got a CEO for the consulting firm. You got people for the foundation. So how does the group or the different ventures within that group go about marketing? What kind of marketing do you do, and how do you attract the right clients, or do you just go through referrals? Like, what is it that you usually do with that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that on the marketing side, we do a combination of events, we do publications, speaking, also through the engagements that we have, we get referrals through those. We have partners that are focused on also selling engagements, so that's how we're growing the firm. I'm involved in quite a lot of that. Basically, I divide my time between the three different areas, so the venture, foundation, and the consulting firm. The consulting firm helping on the marketing and sales side, foundation helping to generate funding for the programs and delivering the training, and then on the ventures, helping to grow some of these ideas that we have. So it's a portfolio. I think that being able to find a team that's able to drive these different areas and having the right leadership there has helped me a lot, because I've been able to move into different roles, and also being able to let go, because in the beginning this is your baby basically, and you have to feel comfortable that people are going to have different ideas and they're not going to do everything the way that you would do it. But there's several ways that things can be done, and there's neither a right or wrong how you should.
Okay, good. So, how did you? I mean, most of your, especially initial work, was through networking, through getting to know people. So I'm just curious, in this whole development of the two ventures over the past 10 to 12 years, how important was the topic of building relationships for you?
Well, I think that, I mean, for me, it's a passion. So I always say it's critical to a business. I'm fascinated to understand, how do you turn networks into assets? How do you understand your networks? I think that the tools that are in the market today are pretty ineffective. People have a lot of contacts, but what do those contacts mean? How do you effectively generate value out of them? I think that that's a real challenge, and that's one of the areas that we're focusing on in one of our venture ideas. But I think that understanding the type of people that you need to connect with in order to grow your business is very important. Figuring how you get to those people, and then really setting targets for yourself and pushing your team to reach out and get a number of meetings, a number of new contacts into the pipeline. Also, what I find is that a lot of the relationships that you had prior to setting up the business might not be the best relationships that you need to grow your business. So meeting new people sometimes I find is much more effective in terms of being able to sell versus trying to rely on some of the older relationships you have. So it's really critical to get out there and just really meet people. And you can also do it just by connecting to people on LinkedIn, or I'm not that effective with Facebook, but reaching out, starting to build a relationship, that's also a very effective way to start to grow.
Okay. So just a last piece of advice before we go into where can people find you. So, like, what kind of advice would you give somebody who maybe has a consulting firm, or who has a startup in the first 1 to 3 years, and now they want to go from one or two people to scale this with the team, but also scale it outside of their current location?
Yeah. That's a tough question. Scale is important, so you need to get critical mass, and in the consulting business, to me, around 20 people is critical mass. So it's important to get engagements outside of one client. So if you have just one account, if you move into another account, that's a good step. It's important to have team members that can manage teams as well, so that you're not the only person that's accountable for everything. Also, you can bring in people that are not paid employees. You can bring in people as advisors. You can build management teams around you. Also, I think it's if you do go that route, just make sure that you don't invest too much time in setting that up and trying to keep those people happy. But there's ways to grow. But I think that if you want to be successful in this consulting business, you need to get to around 20 people. Or else you're going to have the struggle that as soon as a project ends, there's a crisis because you start to run out of cash, and then you're hunting for the next client. And I think that that's not a pressure that anyone likes to be in. So trying to get to around 20 is a good stable number, and then after that, it'll take care of itself.
Okay. So when you say 20, you're also talking about recurring clients and not just like one-off projects.
Right. And I mean, if you're looking at going into new locations, I'd be quite cautious in terms of how far the geography distance is, because you're going to need to be on the ground with the teams that you're bringing in to set up that business. So if I'm based in Zurich and I want to open up a New York office, I need to plan on being in New York quite often. So can my company run here in Zurich without me? And personally, do I enjoy flying to New York every week? That's another topic. After a while, that gets pretty exhausting. So geography is something to really take into mind.
Okay, good. Wow, that was a lot of wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing all this. So where can people find you? Where can people connect with you? Where can people connect with the foundation and the consulting company?
I mean, the best way is just to reach out to me through LinkedIn. I think that's where my profile is the most visible. I'm quite open to connections, so I'm happy to meet. I'm not open to buying anything, but I'm happy to build relationships. So anyone that wants to reach out to me, I just encourage them to do it that way.
Excellent. So I'm going to link to the foundation and the consulting company below the video, and people can connect with you on LinkedIn. So once again, thank you so much for making the time, and thank you so much for being here with us and sharing your great wisdom.
Great. Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rolf. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Goodbye.